Aren't you tired of the drama? You use your words like they are knives. I don't need that type of drama and trying to be tough all the damn time. You try to make yourself feel better by taking me down. Once I fell, but now I'm strong. I'm ready for the rematch.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and welcome to my channel. And today I wanted to talk about my experience with having a working holiday visa in Australia and just what it's like to get it and live in Australia and my experience with it. So I hope you enjoy and it's somewhat helpful for you. So basically, with the Australian working holiday visa, it allows young Americans from, I believe, 18 to 35 to live abroad in Australia. It also works for New Zealand and I believe Ireland possibly, for up to a year, and you can work there and just have a visa and be able to work and fund your travels. Basically, the idea of it is to open up the country to young people and let them explore their country while being able to fund their adventures and exploring along the way. Basically, after I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to live abroad temporarily, and I thought this would be kind of one of the easiest and best ways to do it. I had not been to Australia before at the time, and knowing that they speak English in Australia made it just less intimidating to go and live. And I was going to be living on my own, living by myself, going by myself, and I really did love my experience, and I loved living in Australia. I ended up deciding to live in Melbourne, which my friend recommended to me, and so I just packed up in like February of 2018 and I moved to Australia. Basically, why I wanted to go was to just have that experience. I've always wanted to live abroad temporarily somewhere, and I thought, like I said, this would be an easy option. I had just graduated from college, so that's kind of like the best time to go. I didn't have anything specifically keeping me in the United States for several months. I didn't go for the entire year because I wanted to start my graduate program in the fall, and so I stayed there until summer, and then I had some time in the summer to just be home because I would be going across country on the other side of the US. And yeah, I thought it was just an amazing experience. I definitely recommend it, especially if you're just graduating or if you're in between things and you're young. I definitely recommend it. A lot of people, when they go to Australia, there's different ways of doing about this, obviously. A lot of people travel across the country, just take odd jobs to get money along the way, working in retail, working in hospitality, working in food, whatever it may be. For me, I wanted to spend more time in one specific city and then take weekend trips, or maybe one 1 to 2 week trip in my time there. But really stay in one city and experience living in a city and make it feel like I'm more so living abroad somewhere, not just traveling around. And I wanted to get experience more so in something that I could pursue like career-wise. For me, it was more important to not just get like a coffee job or hospitality job. I had just graduated with my bachelor's, and I wanted to get something that would give me experience in a field that I was interested in pursuing. And so basically I took a internship instead of working, and I know that not everyone can do that. I understand that. But with my position, I was lucky enough where I was able to get an internship. And so how I did that was I actually went through world internships. I researched different places, but I found world internships, and basically with them, they are specifically there to help students or to help young people basically find internships abroad, because it's hard enough finding an internship locally, but finding one abroad when they might have different systems and different ways of getting internships. Maybe it's less common to get internships there, so there's less opportunity, and you don't know where to look, and maybe it's a different language. And so they're there to help you. And not only that, they help with accommodation, they help with flights, they help just kind of be there for you and kind of be a holding hand as you're settling into the country. And so I definitely recommend them if you're just a bit more nervous and don't want to just do everything on the fly or as you get there, you know, on your own. I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable just showing up and then finding a place and work as I go along. Everyone's different, but that's what I personally felt best with, and I do recommend them. So I lived in Melbourne, and this internship place, World Internships, they placed me in like the border of like downtown Melbourne. My accommodation wasn't great. It was pretty small. I shared an apartment with one other girl, and honestly it felt like it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and I had the walk-in closet. Like, her room was honestly 3-4 times bigger than my room. So I'm not saying 100% my experience living abroad and working with world internships was easy sailing. I would still do it again, but I think I would just not let them do everything and just kind of be like, okay, cool, and then like go with it, but kind of be more in the know, I guess, along the process. It was fine. I fell in love with Melbourne. I mean, the fact that I just fell in love with the city so much made living in such a small room not as big of a deal. Getting the visa itself was actually really easy and quick and simple. I remember just sending in like a simple form. You can just Google like working holiday visa Australia, and I remember getting the visa like 2 days later or something like that. It's super simple. Obviously this is pre-pandemic times, which is what I have experience on, so I can't say right now. I'll probably have to wait a little bit, but definitely getting the visa was very simple and not something that you should have to worry about at all. Also, one important thing to note with just working in Australia, I was there for less than 6 months, so it didn't apply to me as much, but you know, you can be there for up to a year as an American on this visa. You can only have one job for 6 months at a time. So that's very important to note, is that when you're getting a job, you're gonna have to get another one in 6 months. And that's also another reason though why it can be quite hard to actually get a job in Australia on this visa. You're already a foreigner, and there's already like, Australia's job market isn't amazing, and this was pre-pandemic too. And a lot of people are fighting for all these hospitality and food and retail jobs. And knowing that you're a foreigner, knowing that you can only be there 6 months, they're most, you know, you have less of a shot than a local, where they won't have to, you know they can have them longer. They're not going to spend all this time training someone and then have to get somebody new in 6 months. It's definitely possible. I know people that did this visa. I know people that did it in New Zealand and in Australia, and they were able to make it work. Also, for finding jobs, I recommend using seek.com, S-E-E-K. There's just so many options on there, and I really suggest going on there and finding opportunities and just having a look out on there and seeing what you like. Another thing I find that's popular is just Facebook groups. As I was in Melbourne, I was able to find more and more Melbourne groups, whether it's just groups about like, I'm new, let's make friends, like a friend group, or like a job seeking group. I was a part of both, and both there's constantly people posting whether they're seeking for someone for work or whether they are somebody who's seeking work. When it comes to making friends, I definitely had a hard time making friends in Australia. Leading up to this, I had been in school like pretty much my whole life. Like, I just graduated with my bachelor's and I went straight into college after high school. And being in an environment where you're surrounded with students, you know, it makes it a lot easier to make friends. But you know, making friends after college is hard enough, but then add going to a new country alone, and you're placed in a different environment where you're not in school. And for me personally, my internship was in a tiny production company. It was literally me and 2 men that were my dad's age, so decades apart. Obviously I wasn't spending time with them casually just outside of like work hours, and so basically I'm just like dropped off in Australia, don't know anyone, alone, and it's definitely hard to make friends. So good thing I'm an only child. I'm good at being independent, I like to think, and so I had that, and I just fell in love with the city, and I was in the city center, so that really helped with the whole making friends thing. Not that helped me make friends, but it made me having less friends than usual a lot easier. For tips for making friends when you're in a country abroad and you're not in school or anything like that, is to seek out different events. You know, if you're going to be in a big city, there's definitely so many people there and a lot of events going on. Like I said, this is pre-pandemic. For me personally, one thing I did is that I'm Christian, and so I seeked out going to a church every Sunday, and this church had mostly young people. It was very much so just a young crowd there. and they had obviously the church service, but then they always had like a church after party, and then they had different church groups, life groups that you could go to throughout the week. Meetup.com is a great place. I knew about it in the States, but it also exists in Australia and other countries, and that's another great place. I know language exchange groups are popular. You can find that on Meetup or maybe somewhere on Facebook. You go somewhere and you basically just learn a different language and talk to people, and it's just also a great way to make friends. But you just might have to be a little creative with how you make friends, and definitely not easy. It didn't come to me very easily at all. But also you have to remember, if you're doing a working holiday visa, you know, it's temporary, you're traveling. Maybe you're traveling with friends as well. But yeah, I was very hesitant to do Australia. I'm scared of new things and new changes, knowing I'm going alone. I somehow got the courage to do it, and I'm very glad I did. And you never know, there may be people already where you're going to that you don't even know. After I had decided to go to Australia, I found out that a girl that I studied abroad with like 2 years prior was already in Melbourne, so I was able to meet up with her. I've done like Kentucky trips in the past. They're basically like group travel trips, and a lot of Australians are on those trips, so I was able to make some friends, and they're Australians, so they're in different cities in Australia, unfortunately, but I was able to visit them on weekend trips. I even did a Kentucky trip in Australia for 2 weeks, and I was able to make friends through that. And then afterwards, like, a girl visited me in Melbourne and we got to hang out because she was doing a gap year, or I had a friend back home who was always wanting to go to Australia because she has a parrot, and that parrot is native to Australia, and she wanted to see it in the wild and just travel with me, and she thought what better way to visit Australia than when one of her best friends was living there for several months. So I mean, there's lots of different ways to connect with people. If you're thinking about doing it, especially if you're young and you're just graduated and you have the time, like, just do it. You know, if you don't like it, you can always go home if it gets to that point. It's better than living with regrets. I definitely recommend it. And if you have any questions about, you know, going abroad on a working holiday visa, please leave them down as a comment. I know there's a lot to it and I probably didn't cover everything, but that was kind of just the gist of my experience with living in Australia on a working holiday visa, and I really loved it. It wasn't easy. I had a tiny room. I had a hard time making friends and I got lonely, but I fell in love with my city that I was at. I had an amazing time. I got to explore other parts of Australia, and I did make some friends, not many, but some, and it was definitely like a trip of a lifetime, and I got to scratch off that on my bucket list, you know, living abroad. So yeah, have a good day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.